So it seems like you guys really like when I do videos about Webflow, and I don't blame you. There's a lot to like about Webflow, so let's do that. What's going on, guys? My name is Leopoldo Perella, and I do videos about web design, UX design, and the overall design process. Anytime we have looked at our video analytics, we have noticed that anytime we mention Webflow, the likes and the views and everything goes up. And I'm sure there's a lot of reasons for it, but one of the reasons, or I think one of the main reasons, is because you as a designer, or even as a person who is going to build your website, you have realized all the great things that Webflow can offer. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about some of the things that you need to keep in mind before you start to design a website or develop your website using Webflow so that you can create the website you always wanted. If you're interested, stay tuned.
This a ticket talking margin for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta.
The more and more I get to use Webflow, I have noticed why so many people are trying to use Webflow now to design and develop their websites. But there are a few things that I like to keep in mind before I dive into Webflow and while I'm also building these websites with Webflow. So let's get started with some of those things. The first one is that I will always recommend that you start your design process outside of Webflow. Many people go directly into Webflow to start building websites and whatnot, but the reason why this may be bad is because you're going to be creating a lot of classes, CSS classes, IDs and elements that you might not need when you launch your website, and sort of the structure of the website may not be as clean as you would like it to be. So if you're using Webflow to build your website, you know that it's going to take you at least half of the time that it would take you if you built your website anywhere else. So what you can do, instead of spending more time on Webflow, try to spend more time on your design file. Make sure that this file is organized properly, make sure that you have the different font types organized and shown as properly, so that when you get to design your website, when you get to develop your website, you will be able to see the pattern, the different sizes for the different elements, like your H1 tags, your H2 tags, and your paragraphs. This way, the development in Webflow will be a lot easier. The next thing that I always try to do, and I always recommend you to do, is to export your files from your design file properly. What I mean by this, if you're going to be using icons for your website, make sure to export them as SVG file. If you're going to use photos, export them as JPEG, and then take these JPEGs into something like tiny PNG and make them even smaller. Remember that you're creating amazing designs, but you also want the experience that someone has when they're using this website to be just as remarkable as the designs you have created. The next thing I have here on my list, and is something that I learned from Ram Segal, is to create a style guide within Webflow. And a style guide pretty much is all the elements that you're going to be using, like your title tags, your paragraphs, if you're going to have a small paragraph, and all the different colors that you may be using for your website, and like different buttons that you're going to need to for different call to actions, and pretty much any element that you're going to be repeatedly using throughout your website. Now, one of the things that I do is that I do this with Adobe XD while when I'm starting to design the website, so that I have all my elements ready, and whenever I'm creating pages or the design for new pages on Adobe XD, it's very easy for me to just go over the left side. Let's say I'm adding a new title for a new page, a H1 tag, then I highlight the text I'm working on, and then I head over to the left and I click my H1 type style, and it already changes it to what it's supposed to be. And you can do the exact same thing with Webflow, so you can get all your main classes or all your main attributes and all that ready before you get the development. Then the next thing I have here on the list is to remember to create a proper structure on your website. And this sort of goes back to the first point where I said to not start the design process on Webflow. You always want to make sure that your websites are using the least amount of code possible so that they run very fast, but also that your websites are being structured in a way that is easy for you to go back and see when something may be wrong, or to be able to add different elements to your website. And the best way to think about it is like you have a section for a specific part of your website, Then inside this section you may have a container, and inside this container you may have a wrapper where all the other elements are going to be found. So if you do have this sort of like a ritual of being able to create your website like this, it's going to make it a lot faster for you to be able to build the website, but also easier for you to go to a section, to a wrapper, and to remember your CSS classes. Which brings me to the next point. You need to name your classes and your IDs properly when you're building a website with Webflow. A lot of people, they might drag a div container and drop it and then leave it there and not name it properly, or don't give it a name that's actually relatable to the different elements that you're working with. So let's say you are adding let's say you have an about page and you need to add all your team members. So what you should do is that you should first add a section to your website, then you can add your container. Normally a container is between 1100 pixels, maybe more depending on the design you're working on. And within this container you're going to add maybe something called, or a class called team wrapper. And in these team wrappers you're going to add different team members. So maybe like individual team members is a class, and then within this class you have another class named individual team members photos. And then you do the same thing for names and whatnot. Just make it sure that you do it in a way that you can remember everything or every class you have used. And let's say someone else comes in to do some work on your website, they should also be able to figure out what classes go with what. The next thing I have here in mind, or like to keep in mind, I have noticed a lot of people who do Webflow websites and even teach Webflow websites that they are using classes instead of the proper tags. And what I mean by this is, like, I have seen people do h1 tags right throughout the website. So anytime they have a title, it's an h1 tag, which is the main heading of your website, with a class of h2 or secondary title or secondary something like that. And this is wrong because when you're thinking about SEO, you have to remember that Google is crawling your website or the website that you have designed and developed, and they want to know what is the main title of your website and what are the secondary titles, the H3 titles and 4 titles, and all the way down there until I think it's like H6, so that they can understand your website. When you only give every title on your website an H1 tag and you just give it a class of secondary title or H2, it's not going to do that for Google. Google is just going to think that you have many main headings on your website, making your website not as rankable as it should be. The next thing that I want you to keep in mind though is that on Webflow, you can actually clear out any classes or IDs that you are not using. So I know sometimes when we are building websites, we might put classes for the time being, but then we forget to delete them. So on Webflow, you can easily just clear your classes, and this way what will make sure that happens is that your website doesn't have unnecessary things that need to load that are not part of the actual website. The next thing that I'd like to do, and this is something like a trick I learned from one of the Webflow courses, is that I like to add to my sections a 20 pixels padding for the left, top, and right and bottom of the section. And what I realized that this does is that anytime I want to go, let's say from desktop to mobile, or desktop to tablet to mobile, my sections is already padded. I guess that can be the way to say it. And then what this allows me to do is that I don't have to worry about making the sections bigger or smaller or anything like that, because I already have a space between the left corner and the right corner. And then if you're thinking about your navigation, it will already have the top padding set for you. So this is just like an easy trick that I like to do, just to make that process a bit faster. And then the last one is that I do like to spend a lot more time with Webflow when it comes to mobile. The reason for this though is like at least most of the websites that we do create, we get about 80% of the traffic is mobile. So with Webflow, we're able to pretty much customize the mobile experience so much more that not spending time on it feels almost wrong. So with Webflow, if you're working on Webflow, make sure that your mobile experience is really great. I know sometimes designers like myself and designers probably like you, when it comes to Webflow, we like to go all out with animations, with different elements flowing from one side of the screen to the others, with the buttons of the website just appearing and the text flowing and all these amazing things. But the reality is that when someone looks at your website on mobile, they scan through the website so quickly that all these animations and all these amazing things that we do are sort of useless. And also this will slow down the website when someone is not connected to a Wi-Fi spot, they connected to their data plans or something like that, or they might not have a very good internet connection for some reason. Then for mobile, what we want to do is we want to simplify that experience to a point that it looks like the website, it feels like the website, but it also makes the experience very fast and makes them, whatever information they need to get, they get it quick enough. And one of the things you will see is that with Webflow you can change the size of different elements. So let's say if you have a heading 1 on your desktop that is 55 pixels big on the font size, on mobile you can make it a bit smaller and then make some elements like your call to actions a lot bigger, make some text maybe a lot bigger. Just think about someone using your website on mobile and how they will interact with it, and also where you want to take them. So I hope these few tips are helpful for you. These are things I keep in mind whenever I'm working on a Webflow project. I'm about to start on a few Webflow projects, so I will maybe do some videos to show you how my thinking process behind all this happens, and then you can start to also implement them. And if you have any other Webflow tips like help you get started with your projects and that help you keep on track of what you're doing and improve your web design and development, make sure to comment below. I would like to see what you have to say and then probably create a conversation from it. But before you go, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button so you get a notification whenever I post a video like this, and I will see you again in the next video.